Welcome to the channel, everyone. I'm Captain Mike, and today we're going to be changing our engine anodes. Let's get started. First thing I want to say is please go watch Captain Leon's video. Link is up here, and I'm also going to put a link down below. So I actually had to come back and re-record this intro video because of all the issues I was having getting the anode out. I want to thank Captain Leon and Captain Ken for helping me out and giving me ideas to try to get this project completed because it was a big headache. Hopefully after watching this video, the information you get out of this will help you when you go to do yours. You're going to be lying on your stomach for a long time, so I recommend putting something soft underneath. I have this moving blanket, so I'm going to put that down, and that's just going to help pad where I'll be lying across to get on top of the engines. Using your phone or a small camera is going to be the key to doing this job properly. The anode is located on the starboard side of the engine towards the back. It sits right behind the bracket that's holding up the intake manifold. There is only one 12mm bolt that secures the anode to the engine. It's just going to be a little bit at a time here. Once the bolt is loose enough, you should be able to remove it with your fingers. And this should just pop out. Should.
Nope.
You can now see all my futile efforts to try to get this thing out. First a screwdriver to try to twist it. Then I started hammering it from the side. Then I wedged it from the intake mount. Then I tried chipping it from the top. Then I tried the screw hole again. Then I tried twisting it with channel locks. Then I tried gripping it with a giant vice grip and turning it as well. Got a little movement on that one. At this point, I removed a couple hoses to get better access to the area. I was able to take a flat-bladed screwdriver and wedge it in between the anode and the engine and tap it with a hammer to break it apart. Hopefully we should be able to get a good grab on this thing and be able to pull it right out. There we go. Yeah, baby. Oh my gosh. Yeah, baby. I'm the second owner of this boat, and I flush it every single time that I've gone out. In comparison, you know, here's the new one. Here's the old one. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Well, this ain't looking too good either. We'll come back to this in a minute. So that was my port engine. There is no way the starboard engine could be any worse than that. I mean, that was just crazy. The corrosion is actually making it come out. Oh, it's not good. To make this job easier, we're actually going to remove 3 hoses. They're just the hose clamps, so we're just gonna push them out of the way. Very simple to do. I've learned that the best way to tackle these hose clamps is with a pair of vice grips. Once you cinch them closed, you'll be able to easily slide them out of the way. Then the hose can come off pretty easily, but might need the help of a flathead screwdriver on the end. You should be able to use a regular set of pliers for this type of hose clamp. I think I'm going to try to chip out some of the corrosion first. Maybe that'll help relieve the stress. So you can see here, I'm not using a wrench to remove this bolt. I have a 12mm socket attached to a swivel adapter to get around the intake manifold. Now notice the bolt is not perpendicular with the engine, which it should be. Yep, it's just what I figured. That's completely occluded. So let's scrape it off and we'll get our stuff in here. And hopefully we can put it all back together. This is really bad. I've flushed my engines after every single outing. That bolt is toast. I'm gonna have to replace that. You could see even here, there's just corrosion on the inside. I got real lucky that I got that out without it snapping.
"20 minutes later."
Okay, so that's after chipping away at it for about a half hour. Not too bad. I did see a new problem. Don't know how I'm gonna fix that yet. Lucky me. Before I wasted hours scraping out the anode ports, I thought there might be a solution that would help dissolve or soften all the corrosion in there. There were 3 products I wanted to try out: Salt Away or Salt's Gone, which is the same stuff you would use to flush your engines after use, a 6% cleaning vinegar, and a product called Barnacle Buster.
The following day.
So believe it or not, there was actually not much visual action with the Salt Away. I did capture the corrosion dissolving in the vinegar solution, however. Unlike the Salt Away, the corrosion did seem softer, and I was surprised to be able to scrape it with my fingernail. I think the biggest problem with the vinegar is that it wasn't able to penetrate past the surface. The corrosion in the lower layers never got touched by the vinegar. If we left the parts submerged for longer, or maybe have agitated the solution, it may have done better. I wanted to move on and try to see if there was a better answer. This is the Barnacle Buster. I just dropped the anode into it, and you could see chemical reactions happening immediately.
A few moments later.
Holy! I think this stuff is working.
Approximately 10 hours later. 2 days later.
There has been a significant reduction in the amount of bubbles at the surface, and the water is becoming very cloudy. I think we're at the point where the chemical reaction with the corrosion is done, and now it's starting to eat away at the aluminum itself. Let's take it out and have a look. So you can see there's a lot of sediment there at the bottom. The water has changed color. It's definitely black instead of blue. You can see on this one, the surface of the part in the solution has turned to a matte gray. It appears that it started to break down the surface because when you touch it with your hands, it now leaves a black residue on your fingers. It did, however, appear to take off most of the corrosion from the anode though. I let the solution settle without the anodes in them to see how much corrosion accumulated at the bottom of the cups. The Salt Away and the vinegar solutions contain anodes for about a day. The Salt Away had a little bit of corrosion deposits at the bottom. I would say the vinegar solution had about twice as much as the Salt Away. Now the Barnacle Buster is a different situation. I believe all the corrosion almost fully dissolved into the solution. What's left on the bottom and the sides is actually little bits of the rubber gasket and aluminum. The amount of degradation to the aluminum was concerning for me. The instructions state that I need to rinse off all surfaces that have been in contact with the Barnacle Buster. Since the boat was covered in winterized, there was no way I would be able to properly rinse off any parts that I use this on. Barnacle Buster was a bust for me. Even though I did see some results using the Salt Away and vinegar solutions, I didn't really notice any change on the engine when using the soaked paper towel. This unfortunately seemed like this was going to be a mechanical removal. Alright, these are some of the tools I used to try to get as much out as I can. Between wire brushes, tiny little long files, this little spudger screwdriver. The angle really helps on this one. The drill with the swivel attachment, with brushes on the ends, long brushes, short brushes. Those tools that you usually get when you buy something. This helps get at the angles. Some little bit of emery cloth, 3M green pad, the scour pads, the more coarse one. This pick set I had gotten from Harbor Freight. I'll leave links down below to all the stuff I used. Hopefully that'll help you out. Under Captain Leon's recommendation, I hooked up this hose so that this way we can suck up all the corrosion out of the anode hole.
Many unbearable hours later.
We're getting there. We're really not getting there.
Thousands of tears later.
Take a quick peek at this one more time before we put this in. This calls for marine grease around the ring over here, but no thread sealant on here. I guess when you torque this to the block, there'll be no corrosion. I mean, I didn't notice any corrosion in this as it was, so that should be fine. So we just got to put grease here and then torque this down. The setup I used was 12 millimeter with a short 1/4-inch drive extension, and then I put an adapter on it to get to the 3/8 drive. So you need approximately this length. The biggest thing is keeping this part here thin so that it can go underneath the intake manifold. If you look at this O-ring, you can actually see how there's a space in the side here with the water pressure. That's actually going to expand the gasket and the seal here so that water doesn't leak out of it. Pretty cool, huh? Make sure you don't get any grease on the anode itself. Even though you see a socket here, I am spinning this by hand from the extension. Now I'm attaching the torque wrench to tighten it properly. And don't forget to reconnect this hose while we're here. All right, one side is done. Time to work on the broken engine. So before we start the repair, we have to make sure all of our pieces are clean. So we're gonna brush them and hit them with acetone. This is just a stainless steel brush that's just cleaning all the surfaces that's going to get marine tex. So for the repair, we're gonna put a little bit of marine grease on the threads to prevent the marine tex from sticking to them. Okay, now we're gonna take our bolt and we're gonna place it into the threads that are there already. All right, time to mix up the marine tex. Oh yeah, and of course make sure you're wearing gloves for all this. So for this part, I'm doing this almost entirely by feel. Because of where it sits on the engine, there is almost no way for me to directly see what's going on. This is why having a GoPro or a small camera is so important. After everything is placed, I can go back and look to confirm that everything is sitting properly. Now we're going to take our hose clamp and slip this on. So actually keep everything nicely pressed together. And we're just going to make sure we can move this bolt without any issues. Yep, no problems here.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
You can see this is starting to set up now. It's getting thicker, it's getting a little harder, it's not as stringy anymore. And as you scrape it, you can see the color, the sheen goes away. So we want to remove that bolt before it really starts to get stuck in there. So let's go do that. This is why a camera is so important. After looking back at the video, I noticed that this piece wasn't lined up properly. So I went back and moved it to its correct spot. All right, now that that's all done, we're gonna wait at least 24 hours so that cures and sets up properly before we install the new anode.
The next day.
All right, it's been 24 hours. Everything is hardened up real nice in there. So now we're gonna go ahead and put everything back together. All right, now that we got all the corrosion out and the anodes could fit back in, we're gonna go inspect the thermostats in the back. I'm going to leave the anodes out on the first run on the hose in the driveway. This way, if there are any pieces of corrosion that had chipped off, they should be able to be flushed right out the back. It's actually quite easy to get to. This is actually the thermostat housing right here. These are two 10mm bolts. So we're just gonna put a wrench on that and take that off. Now that the bolts are loose, it should just come right off. Obviously, this isn't gonna come out easily. This should just pop right out, but it's not. You can see there is corrosion all around here. So we're gonna take one of our picks and try to just take off some of these chunks here. I'll come in here with the vacuum in a minute and clean up all the stuff. All right, under closer inspection, you could see that that seal was pretty much giving away. That's not from me. And there's corrosion already within the gasket here. Did it work? I'm sure that if you put it into water, this probably did open up. I'm not worried about that. I never got a heat alarm. You know what though? A little bit of prevention is definitely worth it. I'm just gonna go ahead and replace it just for peace of mind at this point. We're gonna take a closer look inside the engine to see how much corrosion is in there, and then check that out as well. Ever wonder what's on the other side of the thermostat? Based on what I saw with the anode, I had to look inside. I was expecting a lot worse, but honestly, it wasn't bad at all. The channels in the valleys that the water passed through had little to no corrosion at all. As far as I could tell, thankfully, it was all good in here. Okay, we're gonna reinstall the thermostat housings without the thermostats so that this way when we run the engine, all the stuff that we scraped out should just flush out. Now the bolts that go in here call for 6 foot-pounds of torque, which is barely hand tight. And it also calls for a thread sealant on here. We're not going to put it on initially because we're going to take them off to put the thermostats back in properly. Now remember, without the thermostats, there's no seal on here. I'm going to clamp this hose back here. This is where you would clamp it if you were towing the boat, but I want all the water to go through the engine and not dump out the jet pump.
Many minutes later.
All right, the engines are cooled down, so let's put the thermostats back in. Remember, these bolts get thread sealant, not Loctite, thread sealant. Now when we put the thermostats in, if you notice there's a hole here, we're gonna keep it down so that water can drain out.
One season later.
So I'm coming back with a little update about how the repair went. The port side went just as planned, everything worked out perfectly, I had no issues. When removing the anode, I did see all the corrosion that happened through the season. It definitely had more corrosion than I would have liked, but there was nothing I can do about it. I did flush the engines after every single outing, but I'm gonna clean it up and we're gonna place it back in. Now the starboard side did have some issues, and I'm gonna tell you about them now. I may have been a little overzealous cleaning this side. The area where the anode rubber gasket sits was now a tad too large. When the engine was running and water was flowing through, the area here started leaking. A new gasket needed to be made. I found this stuff, Moldable Silicone Putty. It was exactly what we needed for this application. I started off by clipping a small piece and rolling it between my fingers to get a nice long tube. Then I placed it under the original anode gasket. And don't forget, we still needed to grease the rubber here. You may have noticed you didn't see me using the torque wrench on the repaired engine. That's because when I went to tighten the bolt, it was giving that soft feeling, and I thought that the whole thing would break apart. I needed to catch more undamaged threads from the engine block. The solution was to use a slightly longer bolt. Fearing that because this was a different material than OEM, I did end up putting thread sealant on this as a precaution. Now you can see I was able to torque this down to spec without any issue. And that, my friends, is the end of the tale of the engine anodes. I hope this video was able to help you out and you didn't run into all the problems I did. If you guys like this video, give a thumbs up, leave a comment down below if there's anything else that you want to see, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you all on the water.